The sun was barely rising over the dusty ridges of the frontier, painting the sky in strokes of amber and red. A cold wind moved through the open plains, brushing across the tall grass and whispering through the wooden fences that guarded the Kane ranch. Elias Kane stood on the porch, one hand resting on the worn grip of his hat, the other holding a small cup of coffee that had long gone cold. His eyes followed the horizon, not looking for anyone in particular, just searching, as if the wind might bring back something he'd lost. Inside the small wooden cabin, a boy's laughter broke the morning quiet. Little Samuel, blonde hair catching the golden light, eyes blue as the mountain lakes, was trying to pull on his father's old boots. They were far too big for his small feet, but that didn't stop him from marching proudly around the room like a tiny cowboy. Elias smiled faintly as he watched through the open doorway. It was the first time he'd smiled in days. The ranch had seen better times. The crops were thin, the horses fewer, and the debts heavier than the saddle on his back. Since Mary died 2 winters ago, the house had grown quiet. Too quiet for a man who once had laughter echoing through its walls. Elias had promised her one thing before she passed. Take care of our boy. Teach him to be strong, but kind. That promise had become his reason to keep breathing. By noon, the two were saddled up and riding down the dusty path toward town. Samuel sat in front of his father, holding the reins like a proud rider. The boy pointed excitedly toward a group of cowhands driving cattle through the valley. "Pa, I'll be like them one day." Elias chuckled softly. "You'll be better than them, son. You'll ride for the right reasons." The small town of Clearwater was alive with the usual noise. Blacksmith's hammer striking steel, horses whinnying, merchants calling out prices. Elias stopped by the general store, trading a few hides for supplies. Folks nodded politely, but most kept their distance. The name Kane still carried weight. Once a lawman, Elias had walked away from the badge after the bloodshed at Devil's Ridge. Some said he'd turned outlaw. Others called him a hero. He called himself a father trying to start over. That night, as the fire burned low outside their camp, Samuel curled up beneath a blanket, his small face glowing orange in the flickering light. Elias sat nearby, whittling a piece of wood into the shape of a horse. The stars stretched endlessly above, the kind of sky only the frontier could hold. "Pa," the boy whispered sleepily, "did Ma really ride horses better than you?" Elias laughed quietly, his voice thick with memory. "She surely did, son. She had lightning in her veins. Could race the wind and win every time." Samuel smiled, his eyes closing. "I wish I'd seen her." Elias looked at the stars. "You will one day. She's in every sunrise, every storm, every ride you take." Days passed into weeks. The ranch struggled against drought, and Elias found himself riding farther each day, hunting for work or water. One evening, while crossing Dry Creek Canyon, he spotted smoke, black and rising. He rode hard and fast, finding a wagon overturned, flames licking its sides. Inside were travelers ambushed by bandits. Only one survived, a woman wounded but alive. Her name was Clara Monroe, and she was on her way west in search of her brother. Elias took her to his cabin, treating her wounds while Samuel brought water and bread. Over the next few days, Clara's strength returned. She was gentle but carried a sadness that mirrored his own. Samuel grew fond of her quickly, and Elias found himself speaking more than he had in months. One evening, she asked softly, "You ever think about leaving this land behind?" Elias shook his head. "This is all I got left and all he's got." She looked towards Samuel, who was chasing fireflies outside. "Then maybe this land isn't cursed. Maybe it's waiting for something new." But the frontier was never kind for long. A week later, trouble rode into Clearwater. The Dalton gang, ruthless men who left fire wherever they went. Elias knew their kind. Years ago, he'd arrested their leader, Jeb Dalton. Word was Dalton had broken out of prison and was hunting for the man who'd put him there. That night, as the wind screamed across the plains, Elias saddled his horse and loaded his rifle. "Pa, where are you going?" Samuel asked, his voice trembling. Elias knelt down, cupping his son's face. "You stay with Miss Clara, lock the doors. No matter what happens, you hear me? You stay brave, son. But I want to go with you." Elias smiled faintly. "You already are. Right here." He placed his hand over his heart. He rode into the storm, the lightning flashing across the open sky. The Dalton gang was waiting near the old ridge, 5 men armed and eager for blood. The fight was fierce, gunfire echoing through the valley. Elias moved like a ghost, his aim steady, his courage born of promise. But even the strongest men fall when the odds are too heavy. By dawn, the storm had passed. Clara and Samuel found him near the ridge, wounded but alive. The Dalton gang was gone, lying scattered or dead. Elias could barely speak, blood staining his shirt. He reached for his son's hand. "Remember what I promised your ma?" Samuel's eyes filled with tears. "I will, Pa. I'll take care of the land. I'll be strong and kind." Elias smiled one last time, his gaze drifting toward the sunrise. "That's my boy." Years later, the Kane ranch thrived again. Fields green, fences strong, horses running free. A young man, tall, broad-shouldered, and kind-eyed, rode across the same ridge where his father once stood. Samuel Kane had grown into the man his father dreamed of. Clara still lived on the ranch, her hair silver now but her heart strong as ever. She watched from the porch as Samuel helped a small boy, his own son, learn to ride. The boy laughed as he tried to steady himself in the saddle, just as Samuel once had. "You'll fall a few times," Samuel said gently, "but you always get back up." "Just like Grandpa?" the boy asked. Samuel smiled at the horizon. "Exactly like Grandpa." The wind moved softly across the plains, carrying with it the scent of rain and wild sage. The land that had once seen pain now breathed peace. In the heart of the frontier, where dust met dawn and silence met song, a father's promise lived on, not in words, but in the unbroken bond between generations. Because love, like the land, endures every storm. And somewhere beyond the sunset, Elias Kane rode again, his hat tipped low, his heart at peace, his promise kept.